Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. I'm excited to actually, we're going to be doing something different today. Usually we have different speakers that are going to be that come every first and third Monday of each month, but I'll be your speaker today. And we're actually going to do something very different. So different is always good. So I want to provide something very different for you. And let me actually show you what we are actually going to be going over today. And of course, my name is Matthew Ponder. I am just give me a second here. And today's going to be more of an open forum. So if you have any questions or any ahas for today, just go ahead and jump in. You can put in the comment section, or you can unmute yourself or to ask any question that pops up. So it'll be more of an open forum. And so today will be a lot different. Before we get started, just want to start with a prayer first, and we'll get started. Dear Lord, we thank you, Lord, that you are our Lord and our Savior. You are our God and our King, our direction. We thank you, Lord, that not only that you provide us with spiritual gifts, spiritual weapons, you give us peace, you give us honor, joy. You give us a lot of benefits that pertain to us in our souls, but also you understand that the earth goes through economic calamity. It goes through things that affect us in a natural sense. So, Lord, you know that I will be speaking about the natural side of life and what your people can do and what we can do in times of anything that is uncomfortable, that seems to keep repeating itself in the earth. So thank you for today's lesson, and let people come and leave with greater understanding and leave more confident when it comes to their finances and the natural side of life. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so today we're actually going to talk about how you can survive and thrive during recessions, market volatility, and inflationary times. It seems like these things, so it seems as if these three things always happen. It seems like throughout American history, we've always had to go through these things one time over another. Even in modern days, we are still going through them. And so I want to show you what is available for American taxpayers, which is a sacred tax-free cash cow. And I call it a gift from the IRS. So no matter what retirement savings account you have or investment account, each of those accounts will function differently. They have their benefits, their pros, their cons, their fees, their benefits, how they produce, how they're taxed. So don't look at this as the question is not whether it's an IRA or Roth 401k, a Roth IRA or 403b. Don't look at it's not about what product or what investment it is. The actual question is which section of the tax code is more advantageous, more favorable for me under that. So those instruments that I mentioned, they all function differently based off the tax code that is structured under a tax code. So that's where we're going to dive in. We're actually going to go directly to the source. And this is a gift. So I'll explain what it is, but that would be the premise for today. Now, most importantly, how you can utilize the often misunderstood financial strategy that outpaces inflation and protects your principal and your earnings from market loss while generating tax-free returns year after year. Now, we all know Warren Buffett. He's the go-to person when it comes to investing. One of the go-tos, rule number one is don't lose money. If you're going to be in the game of investing, you should know how it works. So don't lose money. And rule number two is, read rule number one. Now, there's 4 questions I'm going to propose. So just answer them within yourself. First is, did you personally or someone you know lose money in the year 2008? Do you think a crash like that will happen again? Do you want that to happen again to your money, to your family, your conscience? Do you want that? Do you want to relive that again during the next one or even the future ones? And number four is, what are you going to do differently this time? So I'm here to present a solution for those things. Now, if you haven't realized, it's open season with the IRS. When it comes to taxes rising based off of a lot of government spending, a lot of free stuff. Free government programs do cost money. They just don't tell you on the pulpit. But a lot of these things, when it comes to rising taxes, inflation, volatility, people seem to not really think about it when things are at peace, things are good. But when things start getting choppy, then they react and put their head in the sand, just like this ostrich. Now, this is not a political agenda. It's not a health agenda or a religious agenda. I prefer to be honest and straightforward, and I hope that's something that you would like, to do as well. So I'm going to be very honest and give you my take. I'm not a doomsdayer, but I'm more of a realist. I look at what actually has happened, what's currently in place, and find out, is that going to happen in the future? But that's it's too much too much storage in your mind to really see the future that way. Now, when I hold these type of these conversations, people always want to say, I hope things get better. And now what I'm referring to is the last 2 years during COVID. Now, as a country, we have not faced a health scare like COVID-19 in years, in a very long time. And so when it hit, out of the blue, a lot of things were shut down. People lost jobs. Things weren't. A lot of people were unprepared. People lost their income as a business if they're on commissions. Business had to lay people off. So things were not normal. And so I always tell them, get used to different, because if it's a terrorist attack, if it's a health crisis, whatever external things happen around us, they affect the economy. They'll affect the stock market, which billions of dollars are in there, and the majority of people's retirement accounts are in that market. So whatever external things happen do affect people's retirement savings. So I'm talking about future money that you hopefully is going to be there in the future. Because right now, if you're working, you're fine. You believe that you're fine because you have a steady income coming in. But what I'm referring to is the future, 15, 30 years from now, when you decide to no longer work, you want to make sure you still have income. And so things will not proceed to be the same. So if you're a faith-based person, you can see the signs of the times that things are not going to get back to normal. And so for myself, I'm a tax-free income planner. My brother and I, we do work together. Our main niche is helping you reduce your lifetime taxes. Usually people pay taxes year by year, but what we're referring to is actually lowering your overall taxes, because depending on where you have your money at is how you're going to be, how it's going to function and work. So in this instance, and then also increasing your net spendable income, having that future income there when you need it the most. That's the place that I'm kind of directing towards, and having more income in the future, and then so income planning. And so one of the things, if you think about the worst decade between 2000 and 2010. 5 years into that, we didn't know it was the worst decade until 2009, 2010, after we went through those two crashes. But during that time, when it was going on, in 2005, the Putnam Investment Retirement Survey said that retirees said their biggest mistake was failing to invest their money into tax-free accounts. So that's the place that that I'm going to share with you today is another option, a safer option, a more predictable income option that is more stable, that you can actually have access to, but you just don't know about it because traditionally, when people go into the workforce for the first time, they're given a certain amount, they're giving certain accounts to save under. But I'll get to that in just a moment. But my take is that if you have retirement savings that are invested directly in the market, that are tax deferred, the goal is to switch from switching from accounts that are forever taxed into accounts that are never taxed. So that is the goal, is reposition that money and protect it from losses, inflation, unnecessary fees, volatility. If you really can't stomach that while you're going to stop working, you need to change your planning. Because one thing you need to understand is for retirement planning, when you first start working, for retirement planning is very different from at retirement planning. So when you're ready to stop working, at retirement planning is very different when you first start working, because you have the option. You're able to switch from reposition that money when you can. Now, there's three dangers when it comes to baby boomers. I'm going to cover the first danger today. That is the biggest mistake made by retirees, is that they think they're going to retire in a lower tax bracket. Now, that has not been true over the last 25 years. The only people or group of people that will be in a lower tax bracket is as if they have no money, if they have no retirement savings, they don't have to worry about taxes. But there's also 4 ways that your taxes can increase in the future, but I'll get to that. But the most important thing is that the question is always, is postponing tax still a good idea? Is what I have still a good plan? Because when you first opened your retirement account, you had life was different, probably. Your circumstances were probably different. If you look at what you have today, is what you have still on track, from what you planned years ago. So you liken your IRA or your 401k to a sandwich. I have a favorite sandwich place in Riverside, California. And every time I'm out there, that's my #1 spot I go to. So that's if I started working today, if I take my food, my sandwich to go, I leave, I work 20, 30, 40 years. I decide I'm ready to, end working, I'm ready to retire. I come back, I pick up my sandwich to go 30 years later, and all they give me is 2 sides bitten off. One of the things that really irritates me is a lot of people people never realized that they were going to be hit so hard in later years, because they were under the impression that tax deferral was tax savings, and that's not true. Tax deferral just means you're stringing along, you're compounding the tax bill. That's all you're doing. You're not saving taxes because you still got to pay them in the future. So a lot of retirees, they don't like paying taxes when they're not working. But that's the issue that they fall into. Millions of people are falling into that issue. Even millennials are going to have the same issue. So that's one of the reasons why this message has to go out, because millennials are going to fall into the same pattern as their parents. So my question is, are you planning your own retirement or Uncle Sam's? Because tax deferred accounts are controlled by your employer, Congress, and money managers. So they control the rules, they set the rules. A lot of the tax deferred accounts are low-hanging fruit when it comes to rising taxes that are going to happen in the year 2026. The year 2026 is when all income tax brackets are going to increase to their older, higher rates. And so when people come to me, they come to me with 80 to 90% of the money, with yet to be taxed. Back in 2009, this article came out from Time Magazine. It says why it's time to retire the 401k and what you can do instead. This was from Stephen Gandel. He said that the premise of the article was, he said that the 401k is a financial flop. It's a rotten depository for our financial savings, because when people were confident, excited to start a new job, one of the benefits to retain them was a retirement account, a 401k, a 403b, 457. But they went through 2 serious crashes, from 2000, 2003, 2008, and it was not what they seemed. And so Stephen Gandel was also talking about market volatility, which is the third reason why. Now, I won't get into any CPAs or too deep with CPAs, but usually, because there's a difference between tax planners and tax preparers. The tax preparer is just collecting documents, looking at the short-term view, the short-term future for you, and all they do is tell you, defer your tax as long as you can. If you want to save taxes this year, put it off. But putting it off just means procrastination. What does procrastinating anything come out good? If you still don't need the money in the future when you're in the 60s, or especially if you're 72, if you still don't need the money, continue to pay it off or defer it. But once you get past 72, now you're obligated and forced to take your RMDs. And so that's not what most people, want to be ended up. They want tax-free income. They want to pay no taxes, during their, 60 plus after that point. And so when it comes to CPAs, that's usually how, or tax preparers, that's usually how they see things from a short-term view or a micro lens. Now, there's 4 ways that all of us, including myself, 4 ways we can pay more taxes than we planned. Number 1 is there can be a change to tax bracket rates. So when it comes to Congress and the sitting president, it doesn't matter who the president is, both parties, they each can change tax bracket laws through legislation. So for example, you can make income, then pay more in tax, or once you stop working, your taxes are done. But let's say if you want to start a business after retirement, you'll still increase your tax bracket, your income from that point if you're still making income at that point. But back in 2017, sitting president at the time, Donald Trump, when he was president in 2017, him in Congress, they both passed comprehensive tax reform for millions of Americans, where they lowered all income tax bracket rates. Now that was in effect from 2017. Now it's on track to expire in the year 2025. Now, as I mentioned, in 2026, all income tax bracket rates will increase to older higher rates. So there is still time, about 3 years or so, to do planning from converting from tax deferred into tax free. And so those are ways that bracket rates can change, is through legislation, and then also through deductions. So if you're still paying on your home mortgage, that you can deduct what you pay in interest from your income, from your taxable income. But if that deduction wasn't available, then your tax liability will be a lot higher. Now, another way would be loss of deductions. Any deduction that's available today, if any of them were, taken away because, our sitting administration, the Biden administration, their sole purpose is to increase taxes. That is their sole purpose. And so, but the second way that deductions can be taken, so if you make $100,000 and you can deduct $20,000, now you have $80,000 of taxable income. Now, let's say once you're retired, Washington decided to change the rules, and you can no longer deduct $20,000. Now your deduction is $10,000, which means now you have $90,000 to pay taxes on. Now your bracket didn't change, but you still end up paying more in taxes unnecessarily. New taxes is another way that your income, your tax bill can increase. This is called stealth taxes, new taxes. This means tax is covering more of your income, or something new is subjected to taxes. Social Security is one example. The scary thing about Social Security is that it's projected to run out in 19 years. That's the year 2040. Now, if you're a single person and you make more than $34,000 a year, or if you're married and you make more than $45,000 a year, either way, your Social Security benefit is taxable up to 85%. It used to be 50, half, but it was actually jumped up to 85%. That's what I call stealth taxes because it wasn't publicly known, it wasn't broadcasted. That's only something you can find out by your own research. It's the only time you can find out about new things that are not publicly known. And then fourthly is legislative risk. So when it's to Congress and the president, they can change tax laws at any time. So you can say when it comes to retirement, you can say that the tax code is written in pencil. It's very unlikely the tax code we have today will be the same we'll have in the coming future. And that's because I want to help you shift from a micro lens, paying tax year by year, and look at it from a macro perspective where you can reduce your taxes over your entire lifetime. And that's only possible through the financial vehicle that you're using. So that's what I'm introducing today is that tax-free sacred cash cow that's always been available, and you're going to love what that actually is. But let's say if you have your IRA and you decide you're going to keep it, that's because that's maybe all you know, or you just don't understand other options available. Let's say it's at 500,000. Now, there's three sections. There's the total taxes paid on RMDs. There's taxes paid on the growth of that. And then there's taxes that your heirs will have to pay once you transfer this account as an inheritance. So this is the total taxes at a $500,000 balance. Over your lifetime, you're going to have to pay $204,000 in RMDs, and that's starting at age 72. The growth on this is $96,000 of additional tax that you're going to have to pay. And then let's say if you don't spend all the money in your lifetime and you transfer it to a non-spousal heir, then they are going to have to pay $156,000 in taxes. So meaning you passed on a tax burden to your kids, your spouse, which is not the wisest thing to do. And also on the taxes paid by heirs, one thing that this is also applicable to Roth IRAs, because under the Biden administration back in 2020, that administration actually is actually limited the Roth IRA, where if you pass a Roth IRA account to a beneficiary or an heir, they can no longer enjoy the tax-free benefits of a Roth IRA over their entire lifetime. Now, what the new rules are is that an heir has to now liquidate a Roth IRA within 10 years, because that's part of Biden's tax plan. Because Biden has a 10-year tax increase plan over the next 10 years, and he's not going to be here he's not going to be a sitting president for 10 years. So he's trying to implement a plan that's going to continue when he's not around. So the total taxes paid on that is going to be $456,000. So you're catching up to total taxes that you started with of $500,000. So if you live in California, that's only going to last you 7 years, 4 months, and 22 days. And let's say you're actually taking money out of this a stock account, for example, in your lifestyle is, to keep the lifestyle that you want, it's $67,000 just to maintain your lifestyle. And let's say you're pulling that from an IRA account, for example. But let's say it still doesn't include taxes. It doesn't include inflation. Fees are not included. Market risk is not included. And where you live in the state, that's not calculated. And RMDs are not calculated. So this is just going to be topsy-turvy. It's very unstable, and it's not predictable. Now, I won't spend too much time on Biden's proposals, but this is what he has planned. First, he plans on increasing income taxes for everybody. That's directly. Right now, directly, what I mean by that is right now he's directly trying to increase taxes for people who make over $400,000. But he also said that no one making under that will see their taxes increase. And that means indirectly. Those are the four ways I previously just mentioned. That's how indirectly taxes will rise for just middle America. Secondly, reducing their 401k tax benefits for higher income earners, increasing capital gains taxes by double. He's going to punish people who are 6 feet under because they can't complain by 50% or more on estate tax. He wants to increase the corporate tax from 21% to 28%. Now, that is not a 7% difference. If a company is making $1 million and currently their tax bill is $210,000, but let's say this corporate tax is passed, now they're obligated to pay $280,000 in tax. That's a 33% jump in the tax bill. All you do is take 280,000 minus 210, that's $70,000 more in taxes that they must pay. Then you take $70,000 and you divide it by the original amount, 210, which will give you the 33% increase. It doesn't matter about, a raise in minimum wages, because the gas pump, the car rental, the barber, food, or the essentials, all that stuff has increased, is a lot more because inflation has hit our country now. He also wants to do away with the IRA to Roth rollovers, that especially for people who make over $140,000 a year. There are some backdoor Roth strategies for higher income earners. And then the last two are just, these are free, programs, healthcare initiatives, student loan debt forgiveness. All this stuff, as I mentioned, free doesn't mean really free. It still has to be paid for, because a lot of things need to be funded. So like the student loan forgiveness, if that's something that's going to be passed, that's going to cost American taxpayers $300 billion, and then an additional $330 billion over the next 10 years. So a lot of this, it just doesn't make sense. Now, there's only 4 illegal tax write-offs made available to you, and that's if you are not a properly structured entity or a corporation. If you don't have either of those two, right now, your deductions are, you can write off your dependent-age children up to age 23. You can tax-deferred accounts, tax-deferred. Yes, if you defer your taxes, of course, you don't have to pay them, but you're not saving on that tax. You still have to deal with it later. Mortgage interest, you can deduct from your mortgage interest. Donations, yes, you can. Your donations play a big part in that as well. So those are your 4 illegal tax write-offs. But once you're ready to retire, your children are going to be a lot older, most likely over age 23, of course. So that write-off is gone. Your tax-deferred account, now you have to deal with that tax bill at that point. And so that's not a tax savings. Your mortgage interest, your home will probably be paid off in the next 30 years. Let's say if it is, that write-off is gone. And then donations, if you're not making an income, then your donations either get smaller or you stop paying donations. Or the other way is that you're getting donations from your savings account, which you're starting to cause depletion at that point. Now, in the 80s, 1986 to be exact, the sitting president during 1986 was President Reagan. In 1986 tax reform, his administration passed this law where American taxpayers now need to pay tax on their earned income, their salaries or wages, passive income from rents and leases, and from their portfolio income, interest and dividends. So this law was passed in 1986 where you have to be taxed on these 3 income streams. Now, the thing you're going to learn about that is called, my favorite instrument, my favorite financial vehicle, is called a laser fund. It's an acronym. So if you want to write it down, it means liquid assets safely earning returns. It's called laser fund. And that's where a lot of my clients have their money. A lot of people don't feel safe where the market is going. They know how it all works. They just want a better option that's much safer, more predictable, has liquidity, has great rates of return, and it's safe. Safe of your actual principal when you first start out. And then any gains that you make in the future are locked in. And it gets rebounded, it locks and it resets. So any gains that you make, you can compound tax-free over your entire lifetime. And so that's something that you're going to learn about next right here. And there's four income streams that people usually take from. Not everyone has four income streams, but usually they take their income from their investment account, from their real estate holdings, if they have guaranteed income, and then if they have any tax-free income. Now, the first one is, this is where 80 to 90% of people that come to me have their money trapped in this investment bucket. This is your traditional accounts, your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds. These are your yet to be taxed. Next, you have your personal residence in any investment real estate. The one thing I need to point out is legally, but also in the financial services industry, you're not allowed to call your personal residence an investment. Because if you think about it, a house appreciates, the equity may appreciate, but it's not giving you a rate of return. It's a 0% rate of return. But legally, you're not allowed to call your personal residence an investment. Thirdly, if you have Social Security, but it's topsy-turvy, it's not stable right now, Social Security. If you have a pension, that's a great idea. And then annuities. Annuities play a great part. There's nothing wrong with them. There's three types of annuities, but there's also three ways annuities can perform. So don't count those out, but those do actually have a place. And then my favorite bucket here is the green one. This is the tax-free option. This is where people don't truly understand how it works. It's really misunderstood because people have not been educated properly. The first option is you can get tax-free income from your Roth IRA, Roth 401k. People think that's the way to go. Roths have two benefits. They came out in 1997. You'll learn why I don't own a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. I never will. And now, why would I? And then secondly is municipal bonds. You can get tax-free income from bonds, but a lot of municipal bond companies are going under, filing bankruptcy. Plus, they're not popular today, and plus they're very low yielding because they're subject to interest rates. So right now we're in a very low interest rate environment. So right now they're very low. But the one I want you to focus on is the third option, which is a max-funded, tax advantage insurance contract. All right, don't get lost in the word life insurance. This is where the IRS allows any American saver to accumulate their money tax-free, access it tax-free, and transfer it where your account blossoms in value and also transfers to your beneficiaries income tax-free. This is the only financial vehicle that the IRS allows under 3 sections of the code, and it's been here ever since 1913. But I'm going to give you the history of it next. And this is the laser fund, where it's liquid assets safely earning returns. And when it comes to when you're at retirement, before retirement, or if you're already in retirement, that applies to both. I suggest no more than 30% of your income come from the investment bucket, because there's the volatility, the taxes, the inflation. If you don't want all your money to continue to be under that umbrella, you should have no more than 30% should come from that. When it comes to real estate, no more than 30% of your income should come from that, because if your equity goes down, if you have a bunch of vacancies, those things do happen, and you don't know when they happen. So not more than 30% of your income at retirement should be there. And then when it comes to guaranteed income, anywhere between 100 to 80%, depending on how you want to diversify, should come from, Social Security, if it's still here in 19 years, pensions, and the right type of annuity. And of course, pensions or annuities, they're in the same bucket, the same department there. And then, but what I find and what I've realized is that between 40 to 60% of your money in retirement should come from tax-free. Now, as I mentioned, Roths have two benefits, but the max funded tax advantage insurance contract, which is called an IUL, has the same two benefits as the Roth, plus four additional benefits that Roths will never have and they don't have. Now, if you look on the left-hand side, I wonder, do you know what that represents? That represents the year 1776. Now, the Independence Day, that's July 4th. That's why we celebrate our country from, we took our country back. Congress voted in July 4th, 1776, to break away from Great Britain because Great Britain had control of this country, the 13 colonies. So Congress came together on July 4th, 1776, and voted, let's break away from Great Britain and let's become independent. On the right-hand side, if you can see the year at the top, 1900. But the year is 1913. That's the year that makes the whole tax-free story so incredible. Now, before 1913, all Americans, up until 1913, all Americans, income taxes for Americans were only required to fund wars. So if there were wars that happened from 1776 to 1913, income taxes were only needed to fund wars. So that means income taxes, they came and they went. But in 1913, income taxes came and they stayed. So that's how that all came about. And when you look at, and I really understand, and I know that you're taking accountability and you're taking the responsibility on yourself to make sure your family's taken care of, while you're here, even after, if you're not here, that they're still taken care of. And I know that you're taking that responsibility to make sure that you yourself are taken care of, because we have to take care of ourselves. Taking that posture of being accountable and being responsible for your own financial future, that's the best thing that you can do for this country. Because when you're doing that, that means you're taking pressure off of the government. That means you're not relying on the government to fund your retirement. You're not relying on your kids. You're not relying on Social Security. You're not relying on welfare benefits. When you take your own responsibility for that, you're not being a drain on society. Now, I mean that with respect, but in other words, that means when you take pressure off of the government, they're going to allow you to accumulate, access, and transfer your money income tax-free by using a max-funded tax-free insurance contract. It's the only vehicle in the Internal Revenue Code that the IRS allows for anybody to accumulate, access, and transfer income tax-free while you're living, because you're doing for living benefits. You're not doing for the highest death benefit. That's not what we're doing. That's not the objective. The objective is to use a max-funded contract for living benefits, for money, for income. That's why you're doing it. So that means that you're putting the most money that you want to put in. I can't get into the details now, but the concept is you want to put as much money inside of the contract as you can with the least amount of death benefit. And that's where 1980 came in. And that's where E.F. Hutton came. So if you guys know about E.F. Hutton, he was the brainchild behind the tax-free story. He really cranked it up in 1980. Now, this is the turning point of the emergence of universal life. This is a tax-free option. What E.F. Hutton did is he realized that his clients during that time, as I mentioned, recessions, volatility, inflation, they've always happened in this country. So in that year, he realized his clients don't want to go through that anymore. So he said, let's put money in $1 trillion industry. Let's put it with $1 trillion insurance companies. They're better money managers. My clients can still get liquidity, safety. They can still get great rates of return, and they got tax benefits. So what he did was, for example, if you use $500,000 example, he'll put $500,000 in a $550,000 insurance contract. And in that time, there were no really any rules or parameters around that. So he max funded that policy with 500,000, and the client was only getting charged on 50,000. Now the death benefit was 550,000, but he had 500,000 of their own money in the policy. Now you will probably think the clients were being charged on the death benefit 550,000, but that's not how it works. They're doing it for living benefits. They're using it for income, but they were only getting charged the cost of insurance on 50 grand. That was the beauty of it. So they were doing that in 1980. And so what happened was that IRS came, knocked on their door and said, what are you guys doing? You're not supposed to be doing this. You know, who would put $500,000 into a $550,000 insurance policy? And they said, we do, our clients do. Because up until that point, up until 1980, there were really no, a real definition of life insurance. And so those clients were all grandfathered in. And so this is what happened. So in 1980, when E.F. Hutton was doing that, because when he spoke, everybody listened, and he was talking about what I'm talking about. That story is still alive. That this savings account is still here, and it's much better now. It's no longer a universal life, because back in that time in the 80s, interest rates were very high. And so the insurance carrier or company, their general account portfolio was making anywhere between 5 to 10%. And that's how his clients were able to put in 500 grand and immediately start taking out 50 grand tax-free income to live off of. No more taxes, right? Tax-free income. And so what happened is that IRS took E.F. Hutton to court, and E.F. Hutton, they won. They weren't doing anything wrong, but the IRS didn't like how he figured out and found out about these tax citations, 101A, 72E, and 7702. IRS thought E.F. Hutton was taking advantage of widows and widowers by max funding an insurance policy. So they didn't like how, because there were no rules at that time. And so he won in court, but the IRS turned around and went to Congress and said, we have to change the definition of a tax-free insurance policy. And so this is where 101A came out. So in 1982, so this is what's called TEFRA. So in 1982 is when they actually had to put parameters around a tax-free policy. Now, 101A is strictly about the tax-free death benefit, where it blossoms in value and also transfers to your beneficiary's income tax-free. So it blossoms and then transfers income tax-free. Now, TEFRA stands for the Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Act, Tax Equity and Responsibility Act of 1982. This is where IRS went to Congress and said, we need to pass this TEFRA corridor, which means TEFRA means there needs to be a minimum amount of insurance in order for somebody to max fund an insurance contract for tax-free benefits. So there must be a minimum of insurance, because and so that's how, because there wasn't really life insurance, because the example I was giving you, the 500,000 into a $550,000, that $50,000 of that the client was being charged on, that wasn't really a life insurance in the IRS's eyes. So they had to put a minimum amount to pass that. And then in 1984, DEFRA came out. The Congress and IRS didn't know what they were doing when they first did this. So what they did is they had to amend TEFRA, and they passed DEFRA in 1984, which means the Deficit Reduction Act. Now, TEFRA and DEFRA, now they're together. That's concerning Section 101A. 72E in 1984, the same year DEFRA came out. 72E is talking about tax-free accumulation. So when you put money into a max funded insurance contract, you have to comply with 72E. That's what allows for tax-free accumulation under 72E. Now, the goal is to live off of the interest earnings. So if you want to live off interest earnings just alone and not principal, that's that's the best idea, and that's more ideal. And you can do that, and that's all tax-free. And then Section 7702, that's TAMRA. IRS passed TAMRA in 1988. This happened because TAMRA stands for the Technical and Miscellaneous Revenue Act of 1988. TAMRA just means how fast you can put the money in. For example, if you had that $500,000, in the bank, for example, before 1988, you can take 500,000 and max fund it in 1 year, one full swoop, into the tax-free policy. And you can start, withdrawing tax-free income after that. But banks hated that. Money managers, brokerages hated that because so many people were taking chunks of money out of these accounts, and they were putting into a safer, more predictable, a high interest earning insurance policy. And banks didn't like that. So banks had a lobby to Congress, into the IRS, and say, hey, we don't want to get rid of it because this is where we put our money. And that's what banks put their money in, is with trillion-dollar insurance companies. So 7702 was passed in 1988 under TAMRA, and they had a limit how fast you can put it in. So after 1988, you can no longer put a lump sum at one time. Now it has to be spread out over 5 years, for example, to comply with TAMRA. Now, when it comes to the Roth IRA, the two benefits is that you can accumulate tax-free, you can access it tax-free. The downsides of that is you will get penalized, before you're age 59 and a half by 10%. You're forced to take those RMD taxes at age, actually, that's incorrect. There's no RMDs while you're alive, but your heirs have to liquidate within 10 years. So that's incorrect, the forced annual tax. There's no RMDs on Roths. But the whole thing is, if you make over 6 figures, there is, I believe it's like 142,000. If this is today, this is current law. If you make more than that, I believe it's 142,000 as a single filer. If you make more than that, then you cannot own a Roth IRA. If you make less than 140,000, you can only put up to $7,000 a year. If you have more money that you want to save, you can only put so much, up to $7,000. Now, $7,000 is your max that you can put each year. But let's say if you don't maximum fund your Roth IRA, let's say you only put $5,000 in a particular year, you cannot make up that $2,000 next year. You lose that room. That's the downside of that. Plus, there's no safety in a Roth IRA because it's still an IRA. It's still under that chassis. That money is still being invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. If you pass that account to an heir, it doesn't blossom. Whatever the account value is that day, that's what's going to be transferred over. And then, like I mentioned, the beneficiaries, since 2020, now heirs now need to liquidate their Roth IRA inheritance within 10 years. Now, there's maintenance fees, there's advisory fees, there's commissions when you yourself buy and sell. So that's how Roth IRAs are set up. And of course, they came out in 1997. Now, what changed was in 1997. This is the emergence of Index Universal Life. Now, this is what E.F. Hutton was talking about in 1980 with Universal Life. Now, Universal Life is still available, but things changed. Society changed. Circumstances started to change. So companies had to switch to accommodate the changes that were happening in America. Now, those changes where they started to realize that rising taxes are coming. They're coming in the near future. So IUL, Index Universal Life, had to be created to accommodate for rising taxes. Second danger is inflation. When you link to the things that inflate, you will always outpace inflation. Now, that's something a lot of people do not understand. how that works. And then the third danger is market volatility. These three things are what, ever since 1997, were going to be a huge issue over the next 20 plus years. And so the Index Universal Life came out to help minimize taxes, to outpace inflation, and to be safe from market volatility. Now, you now have the option. It's been here, but now I'm here to share that news with you. Is that now you can have tax-free vehicles. You can to the things that inflate, and you can be safe through indexing from any stock market crashes. Now, indexing, I'm not talking about index mutual funds. That's just a commodity. What I'm referring to is indexing. That's a strategy. When you index, you are safe from your principal is always protected, and then any gains that you make in future years will be locked and reset the following year. So you have that protection there. Now, the three greatest strengths with the Indexed Universal Life contract, before I get there, life insurance is the way it is. Now, when I mentioned when you take responsibility and accountability for yourself, this is what the IRS will allow only in life insurance, only in an Indexed Universal Life policy under the Internal Revenue Code. It only works for life insurance. It does. That's why it's not an investment. This is not an investment. An investment is going to be taxed sooner or later, and it's usually subject to volatility. And that's not what we want. We don't want that. So you cannot call this an investment. This is strictly life insurance, and this is what the IRS allows only under this vehicle. Now, the three greatest strengths of IUL is that you have liquidity. That's the first benefit, the first bang. You have safety of your principal, and then you can have great high rates of return. Now, we talked about Roths. Now, the IUL came it was created, or it was given out in the same year as a Roth. But here's the difference. The IUL has the same two features. It accumulates tax-free. You can access it tax-free. There's no 59 and a half age rule. You have the liquidity at any time, at any age. There's no RMDs associated with this. There's no income limits. It doesn't matter how much you make. You can contribute to this. If you don't max fund your insurance policy, you're grandfathered in. You can make it up, that difference, in 10 years, 20 years. You don't lose that room. You can always make up the room that you didn't max fund in a particular year. There's no 5-year rule. Just like the Roth IRA, you have to wait 5 years to access it. The IUL, it's liquid from day one if it's structured properly. And then the death benefit blossoms 2 to 3 times more than the cash value, and it transfers income tax free. And then this type of account you can actually put it into perpetuity. This is something your heirs can enjoy when you pass it off. And then their kids, your grandchildren, can benefit from this. So this is something that will lower your taxes, protect you from inflation, protect you from volatility. It actually gets cheaper as you get older. That's the one thing people don't understand, is that when a life insurance contract is maximum funded, you put all the money in that you wanted to put in. And if it's structured correctly, those two things are important. And that what squeezes down your cost as you age, it gets cheaper. Now, I can't get into the mechanics of that, but it does get cheaper as you get older because it's maximum funded and it's structured properly. And that's why I want to help you, protect you from time, that's taxes, inflation, market volatility, and economic uncertainty by maintaining and having liquid assets safely earning returns. Because tax deferral just means increased taxes. But the goal is to have all my money tax-free. And that's why the IUL is a great option. If you're capped at your employer-sponsored account, but you have more money that you want to contribute, this is the dream solution. That's just one example. You can use this for college funding, death benefit, if that's all you want. If you're unhealthy and you're at a certain age and all you care about is transfer, of course, that's all you want. But we're doing this for living benefits. We're structuring this to use while we're living. You can use it for retirement. You can use it for working capital, real estate management. If you're, if you're paying more or extra into your mortgage, it's probably best to put that extra principal into something that's going to compound and actually work. And then you can have a tax-free IUL policy where all that money all those extra mortgage payments, you actually put it to work, and you can take out tax-free income to pay your mortgage in 30 years, for example. If you have a lump sum capital transfer, this is perfect. This is it's the dream solution. I have a client that just sold his business, and meeting with him on Wednesday, and he got paid out very handsomely. And so, for example, this is perfect for him. This is what I'm going to suggest to him. He can put this in as a lump sum. It's great for tax reduction. If you're a teacher, firefighter, a cop, a police officer, this is great for pension maximization. And then for estate planning. And then, of course, emergency fund. For those that have an emergency fund, you can actually put those funds into a max funded IUL and have the same liquidity, safety, and rates of return. And it's still your emergency fund bucket. It's not in your bank account. You still have access. You still have ownership and control. It's just not in a bank account. Now it's in a better vehicle this time. And I hope a lot of you hope that you learned a lot. I hope that was something that there were some ahas. There were some things you've haven't learned before, and this is something very different that we do on our first and third Monday. But I hope it was something that you highly enjoyed. And now, if you want to talk further, if it's something that you want to talk further, you can schedule a savings plan review. And what we do, we'll get to know you, outline your objectives, and then we can talk more about how this IUL, Indexed Universal Life Policy, how can it work for me? How can I maximum fund it? How can I structure it? How does it work? What companies? All those detailed questions are very easy to answer, and that's something. If you want something you want to add to your portfolio, this is something that you should definitely consider. And I definitely appreciate your time, and it was good to lay this out. But if there's no questions, or if there's any questions, you can ask me now. But if not, I'll let you guys go. And it was great able to share this with you. But yeah, if there's no questions, we can end it now. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate your time as well. Great information, great presentation.
All right. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Matthew. Appreciate that. Definitely going to keep it, I will definitely be thinking about all this for sure. Thank you.
Oh, sure. You're welcome. And you can say that link whenever you want to talk further.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.